as it has always been, between one man and one woman.
Last week, First Lady Katie O'Malley, speaking to a convention of gays and lesbians in Baltimore, called those who killed the gay marriage bill cowards. She later apologized, but that added fuel to this demonstration.
Today, I stand here not as a coward. I stand here as a courageous son, a courageous husband, a courageous father, a courageous man, a courageous pastor, and a courageous voting citizen of the state of Maryland.
A large crowd of those opposed to gay marriage filled the mall at the State House on the eve of the Senate hearing on the Civil Marriage Protection Act. The bill, which died in the House last year, has been rewritten by supporters who say it gives religious organizations protection against being required to perform same-sex marriages. But ministers at the rally told the crowd those protections don't work for them.
We don't want their protection. They have not been to our churches, they don't know our doctrines, and they don't know our God.
The demonstrators promised to fight the bill during the legislative process and proposed to petition it to a referendum if it passes.
God ordained, it started at the first man and woman. Men and women were made for each other, not two men and two women. And the Bible says any two men get together, that's an abomination.
We have 6 children, and our children are well-adjusted, normal members of society, contributing to society, and I think the reason that they are is because they had value of a mother and a father.
The next day, the hearing room of the Senate Judicial Proceedings Committee was filled to capacity as the governor spoke briefly, urging passage.
We all want the same thing for our children: the opportunity to live in loving, caring, committed, and stable homes protected equally under the law. It's not right, and it is not just, that the children of gay couples should have lesser protections than the children of other families in our state.
State Senator Richard Madaleno, a gay legislator, has been trying for years to get the bill passed.
I don't know why people fall in love. I don't know exactly why I've fallen in love with Mark Hodge as opposed to someone else, but I have. And together, he and I have formed a family that it now includes children. And in our country, in our state,
there was a closed-circuit broadcast set up for the overflow crowd. Supporters and opponents sat side by side as upstairs, the Judicial Proceedings Committee limited testimony to 2 minutes per person, 2 hours for each side. This committee passed the measure last year, and legislators said they had heard all the arguments before.
I am not an equal citizen in my home state of Maryland. I am not entitled to join in a civil marriage with whom I choose to have as my beloved. A civil servant, such as the Justice of the Peace, can deny me a state-issued certificate simply because I'm a lesbian.
The hardest thing for a child to do is just to make it through the day. Why would we complicate that situation by redefining what has already been defined by the Bible? The Bible is right.
This hearing is only the first step in a long process. Last year, the Senate passed a similar bill, and it was in the House where it died. And it's in the House also that the bill faces a difficult challenge this year. I'm Lou Davis for State Circle. Starting with a rally of supporters on Monday night, it was a week of feverish activity centered around the same-sex marriage bill.
This is a human rights issue. This is an issue that is overdue here in the state of Maryland, the state of Maryland that was founded on tolerance.
We can and we must find a way to protect religious freedom and individual rights equally in the state of Maryland, and we can do it with this bill.
This group had a sense of urgency following the anti-rally and then a marathon 10-hour public hearing last week. The bill, which would change Maryland law and allow same-sex marriages, was narrowly defeated in the House of Delegates last year, and at the beginning of the week, the consensus was that they were still several votes shy of passage.
We thank you for not giving up and believing that one day, very soon, we can win.
The bill, officially called the Marriage Equality Act, was referred jointly to two House committees, House Government Affairs and Judiciary. They held their voting session on Tuesday night.
The issue is to redefine the term marriage. It's not about benefits at all. It's not about access to hospitals, rides in ambulances, tax benefits. It's not about any of that.
There were amendments offered to delay the implementation until after a referendum could be held and to substitute a civil union alternative. They were voted down. Delegate Bonnie Cullison is one of 7 legislators who say they are gay.
Everyone sitting in this room knows at least 7 gay or lesbian people. And what you say to us when you vote no is that you are different.
Marriage has been between one man and one woman since the beginning of time. We as a state legislature should not overturn it. This is a very radical step. This is a very radical piece of legislation, and we should defeat it.
To think that someone would come before this body and suggest that we should go back to those days because they're same-sex couples and they should be discriminated against and we're going to put that into law is ludicrous.
The vote in the combined committees was 28 to 15 to bring it to the floor with a favorable recommendation.
Alston, no. Carter.
Although this bill is being signed with great fanfare, the effective date of the legislation isn't until next January. That leaves time for a referendum. But that is a concern for a future time for these people. The historic lobby of the State House was the site for another historic event, as it was jammed with gay couples and advocates for their cause. Those who had been working for passage lined up on the stairway, and when Governor O'Malley arrived, he was greeted as a hero. The process since the bill was first introduced has taken decades. The signing ceremony was relatively short. Governor O'Malley said this was a matter of religious freedom and human dignity.
We are one Maryland, and all of us at the end of the day want the same thing for our children. We want them to live in a loving, caring, and committed home that is protected equally under the law. Let's sign the bill.
With that, the governor, House Speaker, and Senate President signed House Bill 438. This is only another step in the procedure before same-sex marriage can be performed in this state.
And the bill is signed.
But even before the bill was signed, opponents of gay marriage were marshaling their forces. They've already begun the procedure to force the question onto the November ballot, hoping to overturn the measure.
We all are committed to working hard and getting this on the ballot November 6th. We have unity, and we have people working hard across the state.
I am supporting the petition drive because I have been overwhelmed from the very beginning of this issue from my constituents, calls, emails, letters, begging me to support traditional marriage.
Overwhelmingly, constituents in my district and everywhere I go out of my district are saying they don't want this, and it will not happen.
But for those celebrating their victory this week, the possible referendum is a problem for another day.
Today's about celebration. We're going to celebrate today and savor the sweet taste of equality on our lips, and tomorrow we'll roll up our sleeves ready to pledge our best efforts to win a referendum ballot in November.
We've been down here working on this for over a decade, and we're really, really excited by today. It's a huge step.
It's going to be tough, but it's all about love, and it's about dignity as well.
With this bill signing, Maryland becomes the 8th state in the nation to legalize same-sex marriage. Although because of the possible referendum, it might be a bit premature right now to celebrate. I'm Lou Davis for State Circle. NFL football and the Ravens have seemed to become a battlefield in the same-sex marriage controversy here. It started when Brendan Ayanbadejo spoke out in favor of the referendum that will be on the November ballot. He was at a fundraiser for same-sex marriage on Monday night.
Well, we're here to support equal rights, and it's been an issue in this country since the first day people landed in this country. So we're still fighting to make things equal for everybody. Everybody deserves to be treated the same.
On the opposite side, his teammate Matt Burke spoke out, opposed to same-sex marriage, which is also on the ballot in his home state of Minnesota.
I can put up with a lot from the government, like higher taxes, and while I don't like it, pushing God out of public schools, but letting a small number of business and government elites and judges define what marriage is for Minnesotans doesn't seem very fair and doesn't make a lot of sense.
The ballot question is the product of many years of debate in the state legislature. There have been numerous rallies on both sides of the issue.
This is an issue that is overdue here in the state of Maryland. The state of Maryland that was founded on tolerance.
Marriage, as it has always been, between one man and one woman.
There was also spirited debate on both sides of the issue on the floor of the legislature.
There are those who've said that this legislation will somehow undermine marriage. Nothing could be further from the truth. How do you undermine an institution? By bringing tens of thousands of new people into it.
I recognize what you believe marriage to be, but what I really believe marriage to be, I believe marriage is between a husband and wife, and that's the reason I'm voting the way I am.
And when the vote finally came, it passed by a very narrow margin, 71 needed for passage in the House.
Having 71 votes.
They were celebrating on the floor, and that celebration spilled into the hallway after the vote. And then the bill was signed into law at a crowded ceremony where Governor O'Malley was greeted as a conquering hero.
And the bill is signed.
But those opposed to gay marriage quickly petitioned the law to referendum. They got the necessary signatures to get it on the ballot next month as question number 6.
We have just hundreds of people on the street actually working. We got thousands of people behind us on this issue. And we really understand that, the core central part of Marylanders are well on board with this issue, and they're getting educated, they're getting informed about it, and they're realizing that, we can get along with our gay and lesbian friends and colleagues and family members, but we don't have to redefine marriage.
Governor O'Malley was at the fundraiser this week together with Ayan Badejo, urging voters to approve the measure.
This is about basic fairness, so there will always have to be a state that's first in an evolving issue like this. There are 3 other states that will be going to the ballot on the same election day as Maryland, and I hope that we are all 4 successful in advancing this cause of basic fairness and equal justice under the law.
It's now less than a month before Election Day, and this question is on the ballot. Both those opposed to gay-sex marriage and those for it say they're ready to increase their lobbying efforts and also their television coverage of the issue. I'm Lou Davis for State Circle. Election Day saw long lines at the polling places. State officials say that almost 70% of those eligible came out to vote. And with absentee and provisional ballots still to be counted, it could be a record turnout. Some people waited 2 hours to get to their votes, and in addition to voting for president, a senator, and Congress, they had to decide on 7 controversial issues on the ballot. What brought you out? Was it the presidential election or the questions?
Well, we always vote, so it didn't take anything to get me out other than the fact that I always vote, and that's our duty and responsibility as a citizen.
You've tried earlier this before, huh?
Yes, but this is the first time I ever had to wait by a long shot.
We are the dreamers. The mighty, mighty dreamers. The mighty, mighty dreamers.
The polls had barely closed when the celebrations began for supporters of the DREAM Act.
It may be premature, but let me say congratulations.
Baltimore's Mayor Stephanie Rawlings Blake was an early supporter of the measure, which gives undocumented students who have gone through Maryland schools the right to pay in-state tuition at the state's community colleges.
Today, Marylanders supported the DREAM Act because it is right and it is fair. Thousands of students have been waiting for this opportunity to gain access to higher education.
I want to go to a law school to defend the basic rights that all of us have in this beautiful country. And today I see the door has opened for me to be able to pursue my dream.
Just a few blocks away, a club at Baltimore's Inner Harbor was bathed in appropriate blue Democratic floodlights. Supporters of same-sex marriage watched the returns and cheered as they came in. They knew early that they were going to be successful in passing the referendum that allows gay couples to marry in Maryland.
Maryland is the first state in this country to offer equality to all families, and we thank you.
Governor O'Malley put his political capital on the line for all 7 questions on the statewide ballot this year, and all 7 questions passed, giving him a personal victory.
And that we're all in this together. That in fact, our best days are always in front of us. And that if we are going to expand opportunity and create jobs, we also have to build a more inclusive and a more just and a more fair society.
It's been a decade and a half since the same-sex marriage bill was introduced in the Maryland legislature, and Maryland has now become one of the first states in the country to approve same-sex marriage on a state ballot.
Hopefully, somewhere in Kensington, Mark Hodge is watching this broadcast. And honey, I say, will you marry me again?
With the approval of same-sex marriage, the DREAM Act, the gaming legislation, and approval of the redistricting map, Republicans say it was yet another indication of how Maryland is a predominantly one-party state.
The Republican Party took it on the chin, but nothing that was totally unexpected. I mean, the Democrat Party dominates, and the liberal wing, the big spending part of the party, dominates. The governor himself had a great win, but I think the state of Maryland had a great loss. All of these questions that passed, somebody's going to have to pay for them.
It seems like the campaign and the debate has been going on forever, but the election is over now, and it seems like the majority of victory on all of the issues and for all of the candidates is large enough so that there won't be any serious challenges. I'm Lou Davis for State Circle.